talk about nitro for a little bit, Tom?
Okay.
When you first started, you told us the stories about your first impressions going to the drags and just watching everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that was watching the progression of fuels going from gasoline to alcohol to a little bit of nitro.
Yes.
Part of that was watching people mix incompatible fuels and be shaking the car right up until the point it was time to launch it.
Yes.
And you and Skinner decided, we can see the progression, we can see the direction it's going. Obviously, 100% nitro is the ultimate goal. And that's the direction you went in.
Yeah, and that was all verified by all the documentation that I found by writing off to companies and libraries and
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
But the amount of energy that's in the fuel, because the engine is just an air pump. If the engine's going a certain speed, it's going to pump so many boxes full of air through per minute or whatever, right? And then you can combine different fuels with that same amount of air and come out with different amounts of energy that's available. And just on paper, the only place you can end up is 100% nitro if there isn't a practical limitation.
Right. But to get to that point, the first avenue that you took to investigate was to talk to your college professors about it.
Mm-hmm.
And they were of no help.
No help.
Right. Their opinion was like, we're teachers, we don't know what we're doing. Correct?
Yeah, we just teach. We don't really know how to fix anything or make anything go.
Right.
And I would explain to them that on Saturday night, the clutch is going to get sidestepped and this experiment's going to happen.
Right.
They're, ooh, wait a minute. We don't know anything, no.
So the second avenue you took was your own journey, and there had been in the past some rail car explosions
Right,
with nitromethane,
right.
and so a tremendous effort was put into research and development as to the physical characteristics of nitro, what chemicals excited it, what
Yes.
chemicals didn't excite it,
Yes,
and through your own research, which was very impressive, you came to the point of your own fuel ratios and what chemicals you mixed with it and what chemicals you didn't, namely alcohol.
right.
Yeah.
And there, in 1958, there were 2 rail cars went up on a rural siding in Illinois and made a hole in the ground when it detonated. And the government and Commercial Solvents Corporation that made the nitromethane really wanted to know what happened and how they could make that not happen, because had that happened in a city, or a railroad went through a city, it would have been ugly. So they got real interested. So in 61, they published their findings. The government and with Commercial Solvents Corporation published it, and I think the government was leaning on them. You guys got to figure this deal out, right? So anyway, I wrote to Commercial Solvents Corporation and got that stuff. And what they did was they figured out that in the tank car, say they're carrying a load of whatever in it, they drain that out at the destination, and then they go take the rail car somewhere else and fill it up with something else. So they figured the worst case, the thing had 5% contamination from the previous load was in there. So they started mixing 5% of all kinds of things with nitromethane and then testing whether it sensitized or desensitized the nitro as far as it detonating. Did it make it harder or easier to detonate, right? With a very scientific little thing, and which their paper explained perfectly. And then they scored everything in a very scientific way, and it showed what happened when you mix 5% of anything with it, or not anything, but of all these
A lot of different chemicals.
a lot of common things, things that we were like
Benzene and
Yeah.
stuff.
And the best was benzene, but benzene was a known carcinogen even then, so we didn't want any part of that. So you just go down the list, and the next one is toluene. Aha. So we mix. So we figure, and alcohol's further down, and it's not as good, right? Anyway, it wasn't a very good choice, and you're thinking the whole hot rod world operates on alcohol and nitromethane. That's a terrible choice. But alcohol, that's just some pollution anyway. I mean, you want to get rid of all the stuff doesn't make it go, right? So we could see on paper that going to straight nitro, we'd get the most energy out of however much air our engine could handle. And so let's just see how we can get there. Nobody knew how to get there. And your question about what was a normal nitro, a big deal was 70% probably when we started, 75. So we started around there just so we could get a known, you go to Hillborn, they set it up for you, give you the right nozzles or whatever they think is right. But they'd set it up to run on 75, or 70, let's say, and you go to the drag strip, put 70 in. So we started right where they were, and we did that with everything. We started wherever the world was already at. And then we had to figure out how to get to 100%, because lots of people had tried high percentages. And also from reading all this technical information, it came it came out that the atomization is really the problem, because if you pour straight nitro on the ground, you can throw matches at it, it will not light, because there's no vapor comes off of it. So it also doesn't want to start burning, right? And so that's the practical limitation. We actually ran 100%, or as absolutely as close as we could get, which was probably 99.9. And then we backed down to get it to be reliable, so that when you started, like say the last round of top fuel on a night race might be 10 o'clock, sometimes 11 o'clock. And it could be pretty crisp out. And the engine's been sitting a long time, so it's cold. There's been some delays on the track, or whatever's happened, and so it had to be reliable to be able to get the thing to start. So anyway, our fuel of choice ended up being 3 or 4% of toluene and the balanced nitromethane. That was an excellent fuel. But then there's other things that go with it, compression ratio and so on, that all that had to get stirred in.
And that brings up a question from me that I don't think you've ever mentioned. Your tire test at Riverside.
Aha.
That's a very important thing, because you think about guys making a couple laps and what's involved, and you guys made 25 runs? 27 runs? Tire testing for Goodyear, right?
But I don't remember what year that was.
No, but it's that, and that's the only reason I remembered it,
Probably
is because
65.
you talked about that. It needs to be thrown in there as
Sure.
a story.
Sure.
Tire testing, and the only reason you didn't make more runs is you twisted the pinion off in the car again. But after 27 runs,
27 runs
in one day,
Right.
No,
2 days.
No, a little over 2 days.
2 days.
Over 2 days.
Like 2.5, under 2.5 days, 2.25 days.
Full passes?
Yeah.
And that's the ones. There's pictures. They mounted a camera,
Yep.
Yeah.
and that's the pictures. You can see Mike's helmet getting blown back and
Yeah.
the tire growing and
Tire test.
all that. And 27 runs, and then finally twisted the thing off. Now, how do you get involved in tire tests?
The way it worked was they gave you so much per run, and then you could turn in at the end of the thing, you do your repairs, freshen your car up, and then you could give them a bill for whatever parts you.
Oh,
you
okay.
used. It was a kind of a fixed format. They'd been doing it for years and years. And anyway, you get invited to that, into that. And I don't know, we were probably on the Goodyear tire deal. There was, I think, only about 6 dragsters that had the Goodyear tire deal
Okay.
for top fuel, and we were one of them. This was probably starting in 65, I guess, maybe 64, I'm not sure.
65 is when they came on the scene.
Okay, then it was 65.
Prior to that, it was all M&H.
Okay. And then, anyway, at some point in 65, we ended up getting free tires, which was really a big help, because that's a major expense, tires. Even though tires lasted a long time, many runs at that point, it wasn't this 3 runs and throw them away, kind of stuff like that.
But it shows that not only were you guys winning some races, but you weren't killing your stuff. If you can make 27 runs in 2 days, you're not hurting anything.
Right.
Except the rear end finally gave up, but who knows how many runs were on that rear end prior to the 27 runs. I just think it's an amazing story. I don't think anybody could do that today.
And that's without taking the heads off, too.
And that's
It's not taking the heads off, right?
Yeah. But
Yeah.
that was part
You
of the
can't
plan.
make 2 without taking a heads off.
no, they can't.
Well, no, you can't compare it today to what we were doing. I mean, that's,
But shows how there was not as much strain on the engine then because of spinning the tires. And the way you ran the thing, you weren't burning it apart.
right, but at the time, no one else could do that. But that was part of our plan, was extreme reliability. Because you can't be in the last round if the engine broke.
Got to
before-
finish to win.
Yeah, you got to be there in order to even have a chance to win.
Right.
And then hopefully you can run well enough to win. But anyway, reliability was a big issue, and Bob Skinner and I worked on it very hard.
What would you attribute your ability to run 27 runs without hurting anything? What would you attribute that to?
If you wanted to get it right down to a single thing, is the fact that we didn't detonate the thing. No extreme pressures that are trying to break anything. You've obviously got high forces. The high forces are one thing, but the way a hand grenade works is it detonates spontaneously. That's what really does all the damage. So just getting good control over the combustion would be the key piece. Yeah, and then to make it worse, in the case of using, say, nitromethane, is not much of the fuel is atomized. Only the atomized vapor part of it will burn, and there's a lot of liquid. So this liquid puddle is laying there. The combustion happens. The pressure builds from the burning part, and it's squeezing this puddle. And when it squeezes it to the right point, boom.
Boom.
And then the cylinder wall jumps out, or
The head comes off, or
something.
the piston goes through to the ground.
This is a Chrysler block,
Okay.
slightly different than a 392, but basically the same idea. But these cracks, especially the center main, this one wiggles because of the way the crank spins.
Right.
They would crack in this corner.
Right in that corner, they would crack, and that crack would run along there for a half an inch before you would then decide it was time to pass the block on. Huh?
Yeah, and other people would run them until they were up 1.5 inches, 2 inches,
Right.
which means they're just about ready to leave.
So
Now,
that so
392, there's more metal right here.
Oh, okay. Now, was there any other area that you found was prone to failure, or was that,
That was the only one
basically
we
that
had
was the
any
weak
trouble.
link, right?
Don, where did he abused blocks to no end? So he could tell you a lot more about where.
This man would split in the hole, crack down this way,
Yeah.
and the caps would dance up and down on the block and transfer metal. So it looked like, instead of a flat machine surface, it looked like you broke it. And the pieces, the little pieces would go like that. And fixing it, there was no fixing it. You threw the block away.
Wow. Okay.
Because
Interesting.
if they danced enough to where they transferred metal to that point, there's other fissures in it somewhere.
Yeah. Sure.
And then I think on people that had those, would break them in the middle, they'd also break down the bolt holes.
Right.
The threads are in here.
Mm-hmm.
Break them. We didn't.